Jake tightened the last bolt under the hover engine and wiped his hands on a rag, sighing in satisfaction. Another solid job done. But before he could step back to admire his work, a familiar voice echoed through the garage. "You're using that primitive thing again?" He turned to see Zwilana leaning against the doorway, arms crossed under her ample chest, her expression the perfect mix of amusement and condescension. Her shimmering blue skin caught the light, and her golden eyes flickered with playful arrogance. "It's called a wrench, sweetheart," Jake said, tossing it onto the workbench. "Humans have been using primitive things like this for centuries. Still gets the job done," she snorted, stepping closer. "You know, your insistence on these ancient tools is adorable. But let's be real, my people have moved beyond that. We don't wrench things open. We use precision plasma manipulators." She held up her sleek, high-tech multi-tool, its chrome edges gleaming. "One zap, and any fastener surrenders." Jake rolled his eyes. "Yeah, until the battery dies, or it overheats, or oh, I don't know, glitches out in the middle of a job." Zwilana waved him off. "Only an idiot lets that happen. Which is why I'd never be caught fumbling with one of those heavy, cumbersome, oversized metal things." She gestured at the monkey wrench like it was some kind of ancient relic. Jake smirked, catching the way her eyes lingered on the tool a little too long. "Careful now, you're looking at it like you're impressed." Zwilana scoffed. "Please. I know for a fact my tools are bigger, stronger, and more advanced than yours." Jake's smirk widened. "Oh, yeah." He leaned against the workbench, arms crossed. "You sure about that?" Her golden eyes narrowed. "Absolutely. What, you want to compare?" The words had barely left her mouth before she realized her mistake. Jake's grin turned downright wicked, and her posture stiffened as she registered the heavy silence that followed. "I mean—" No, Jake interrupted, feigning innocence. "You said it. You want to compare tools, we compare tools." She huffed, lifting her chin. "Fine. If we're doing this, let's make it interesting." Jake raised a brow. "Oh, if my tool outperforms yours, you owe me a night of servitude. Massages, cooking, whatever I want." She smirked. "You'll be my personal assistant." Jake chuckled. "And if mine wins?" Zwilana hesitated. She hadn't considered the possibility of losing. She was too confident her advanced alien tech would win. "Fine. I'll owe you a favor." Jake tilted his head. "Any favor?" She hesitated, then waved a hand dismissively. Yeah, sure, whatever. Any favor." His grin turned dangerous. "Careful what you promise, princess." Zwilana barely spared it a thought, already imagining how funny it'd be to see Jake groveling at her feet. She had no idea what she just walked into. Jake grabbed his wrench with a confident smirk, holding it up like a trophy. Zwilana scoffed, extending her sleek, chrome multi-tool with a flourish, the tip glowing faintly. They stood in the center of the garage, surrounded by scattered parts, loose bolts, and the distant hum of the station's ventilation. "All right, princess," Jake said, giving his wrench a spin. "How do you want to do this?" Zwilana tapped at her device, its interface flashing with alien symbols. "Simple. We both take on the same task. First one to finish wins." She smirked. "And try not to cry when you realize how outdated your clunky human junk is." Jake chuckled. "We'll see about that." She picked the challenge, reassembling the hydraulic struts of a damaged hover cart. A simple enough job, but one that required precision and strength. Zwilana gave Jake a knowing look before activating her tool. A software filled the air, and a plasma arc extended from the device, locking onto a bolt. She tapped a button, and the bolt spun loose effortlessly. Jake, unfazed, wedged his wrench into place and twisted with practiced ease. The bolt gave way with a crack of metal, no fancy tech needed. Zwilena smirked. Cute, but watch this. She adjusted her device, and the next set of bolts unraveled themselves, as if obeying her command. It was flashy, sleek, and undeniably efficient. But Jake had seen alien tech fail before, and he had a hunch. With controlled movements, he worked through his section, grit and leverage making up for any lack of advanced technology. His wrench didn't need a power source, didn't require delicate calibration. It was raw, pure force. Then it happened. A soft beep came from Zwilena's tool. Her smirk faltered. She tapped the side. The glow dimmed. Jake, suppressing a grin, continued tightening his bolts with ease. Everything okay over there? Her golden eyes flicked to him, then back to her tool. She tried again, but instead of activating, the sleek alien device let out a pathetic fizzling noise. No! No, no, no! She muttered, shaking it. It just needs a second. Jake let out a slow whistle, finishing his last bolt. He stood back, stretching. You were saying? She gritted her teeth. This is a fluke. It just needs recalibration. Jake gave his wrench a little spin. Or maybe it's just not as good as mine. She refused to accept it, fumbling to restart the tool. But Jake had already finished the task, standing back with arms crossed, watching her struggle. Then the reality hit her. Her pride shattered. She had lost. Slowly, she turned to him, jaw clenched. Fine. Jake leaned in. Say it. She glared. Your tool is superior. Jake grinned. And? Zwilena swallowed. Her voice dropped to a grumble. And I owe you a favor. Jake's grin widened. Oh, I already know what I want. Zwilena crossed her arms, her tail flicking in irritation. All right, human, what's this favor you're so smug about? Jake leaned against the workbench, tapping his wrench against his palm. Oh, I think you already know. Her golden eyes narrowed. If you say I want you to admit human superiority, I swear. Jake chuckled. Nah, that'd be too easy. I want something more personal. She froze, her confident posture wavering just slightly. Personal? His smirk deepened. Relax, princess. I'm not asking for anything you won't enjoy. Zwilena scoffed. Huh? You think I'd enjoy serving you? Please. Jake raised an eyebrow. I didn't say serving. I said personal. Intimate. Her breath hitched. Zwilena was used to teasing him, used to throwing around flirtations like they meant nothing. But Jake? He was pushing back now. Hard. She folded her arms tighter, hiding the way her fingers twitched. TCH, fine. What do you want? Jake tilted his head. You talk a lot of shit about how superior your kind is. But I bet you've never had a proper human experience. She snorted. And what exactly does that mean? He stepped closer, just enough to watch her pupils dilate. A date. Zwilena blinked. A what? A date. You and me. Tonight. She burst out laughing. That's it? You had the chance to make me do anything, and you pick a date? Jake shrugged. Oh, don't get it twisted. It's not just a date. He leaned in. It's a real human date. Candlelight. Dinner. And he let his gaze flick over her body, just enough to make her shift where she stood. Whatever happens next. Her tail flicked wildly. You're playing dangerous games, human. Jake grinned. I always do. She eyed him, searching for hesitation. There was none. She exhaled sharply. Fine. But don't think this means you've won. Jake chuckled. Oh, I already won, princess. You just haven't figured it out yet. Zywilana paced in front of the mirror, scowling at her reflection. Why was she nervous? This was just a stupid human date. Nothing serious. Nothing she hadn't handled before. And yet, her pulse wouldn't settle. She had thrown on her usual attire, tight combat suit, high-tech, practical, but the longer she stared at it, the more it felt wrong. Jake's words kept looping in her mind. A real human date. Grumbling under her breath, she rifled through her closet, eyes landing on something she had never worn before. A sleek, form-fitting dress made of soft fabric, gifted to her by a trader who insisted she'd look stunning in it. She had scoffed at the time. But now, with an exasperated sigh, she pulled it on. The fabric clung in ways she wasn't used to, emphasizing curves she never cared about before. Ridiculous. A knock at the door. She stiffened, then shook herself. Get it together. With a flick of her wrist, the door slid open. Jake stood there, wearing a confident grin and an actual button-up shirt. He had made an effort. That threw her off more than she cared to admit. His gaze flickered over her, and something changed in his expression. A slow, appreciative look. Not teasing. Not mocking. Just noticing. "Damn," he murmured. He crawled up her neck. "Shut up," he chuckled. "Didn't say anything." She brushed past him, pretending not to feel the way his eyes followed her. "Let's just get this over with." They arrived at a small, dimly lit restaurant on the station, tucked away from the usual noisy bars. Zywilana expected something crude, something messy. Instead, there was a quiet warmth to the place. Jake pulled out a chair for her. She rolled her eyes but Saturday. "Chivalry? Really?" He shrugged, taking a seat. "Call it a human quirk." A server, another alien, oddly polite, took their orders. Zywilana half listened, watching Jake. He seemed relaxed. Like this was normal. Like this wasn't just a joke to him. Drinks arrived. She took a sip, then immediately coughed. "What the hell is this?" Jake smirked. "Wine." She glared. "It tastes like fermented fruit." He raised an eyebrow. "That's exactly what it is." She took another cautious sip. It wasn't bad. Just different. "You're overthinking it," Jake said. "Just enjoy." She clicked her tongue. "I don't overthink." He leaned in, resting his chin on his hand. "You're doing it right now." Her tail flicked in irritation, but she didn't snap back. She didn't want to admit it, but this wasn't terrible. The food arrived, and as they ate, the conversation shifted, banter, teasing, then something softer. She told him about her homeworld. About the endless skies, the twin suns, the sprawling markets filled with tech beyond human comprehension. He listened, actually listened. And then he told her about Earth. About rain, about cities that never slept, about simple things like the smell of fresh bread or the way grass felt under bare feet. She never cared about human culture before. But now, she wanted to see these things. At some point, the drinks hit harder than she expected. Her laugh came easier, her posture loosened. Jake, too, leaned closer, his grin lazy, his voice softer. "You know," he murmured, swirling his glass, "you're kinda cute when you're not acting superior." She snorted. "And you're tolerable when you shut up." But she didn't pull away when his fingers brushed hers. And she didn't protest when he whispered, "Wanna get out of here?" They made it back to the apartment, a slow, buzzing energy between them. Zywilana wasn't drunk. Not really. But she felt light, unguarded in a way that was dangerous. The door slid shut behind them. Silence. Jake turned to her, studying her face. No smirk. No teasing. Just waiting. Her heart pounded. She could leave. Laugh it off. Pretend this was nothing. Or... She grabbed his collar and kissed him. Jake barely had time to react before she pushed him against the door, her hand sliding up his chest. His breath hitched, then he melted into it, hands finding her waist. Heat flared between them, sharp and undeniable. She pulled back, panting, golden eyes meeting his. "This doesn't mean I lost." Jake grinned, breathless. "Oh, princess, you lost the moment you put that dress on," she growled. "Shut up." He chuckled, then pulled her back in.